All right, so we're going to deploy the brand new Cisco 9800 cloud controller on the new version 17 to go in our ISE lab. So we're going to deploy an Ovf template. I've got the ESXi vSphere client, the vSphere client open and my ESXi server picked out. So I'm going to go ahead and browse to my new download here of 17.3 code. It is not the recommended release, but it's the latest release, and we like testing stuff out here. So we're going to go ahead and click continue and put in our host name. Well, let's make it a little bit more official. And we're going to choose inventory location. We're going to put it in that data center. Got a lot of options here. Now there's an option for the high throughput, which is the advanced license. We're going to go ahead and just do the 1K, 10K clients. That's fine. But if you look there, it's got 8 gigs of RAM, 3 VNICs, all of it. It's the same software, no matter how many APs you're supporting. It's just more processor, more memories, more processor, more memory, and it's pretty much the same hard drive space though. It doesn't require anything bigger for the bigger deployments. So this one says high throughput, 7 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM, for example, versus 4 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and 3 VNICs. This one is 7 vCPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and then we go up to the 3K, 6 vCPUs for regular, and if you want high throughput, wants 9 vCPUs. All right, the RAM doesn't change, but the number of vCPUs does. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. We've got our host that we want to plug in, and again, this is all lab, so it doesn't really matter to us. We're going to select our data store. I'm going to do thin provisioning. It's really not a big appliance, right? It's really not. You don't need a lot of hard drive space for the controller other than just to run the very small operating system, and then also a little bit of local logs. That's it. Think of flash storage kind of thing, right? All right, so the interfaces here confuses a lot of people, okay? And I won't lie, I was one of them initially. So I've got a couple interfaces mapped, and what I like to do, what I'm going to do is come back and switch it, because the initial setup thing, I've not installed 17, but in 16, it was supposed to be that if we logged in from the console and we set the country code for our access points that way, we wouldn't have to go to the wireless setup script. That's this GUI setup script. And for some freaking reason, that's not the case on the cloud versions. If you basically didn't configure it from the service port, which is the VNIC 1, then you got to sit to that day 0 setup over and over and over again. We don't like that. So what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to throw this on our VLAN 10 just to get an IP address and basically join the network. We're going to put this guy actually on a trunk interface on the same physical interface. But what I've done is I've created a virtual NIC that is tagging VLAN 10 already, that I'm putting on VLAN 1, and then I've got a trunk port that's on a virtual NIC, but it's a trunk to the switch on this interface. Gig 2 is our primary interface, don't get me wrong. This is our out-of-band service port up here, and then 3 is our redundancy port for HA communications. We are not doing an HA deployment. We're doing standard. I'm going to go ahead and choose next. And in fact, before we turn this guy on, I'm going to remove interface 3. Yeah, I'm going to remove it. Check it out. So we're going to put in C9800 as the host name, and then our super secret enable password. You've got device management service interface configuration. I'm going to say DHP. We're going to say DHP there. And then this will add a route to the remote network where you want to manage the device from. You know what? Let's go back a little bit different here. Let me think. What do I want to do here? Do I want to do DHP there? I don't know. What I'm going to do actually is we're going to create another interface, because here's the problem. If I set up the service interface on the IP scheme that I wanted to use, then whenever I go to configure the actual box, I'm not going to be able to use the IP space I want to. So this is kind of a pain in the ass, but we're going to do it. It's all good. All right, so here's that vSwitch. This vSwitch basically is connected on port 24 of the switch, and depending on which interface I use, it's trunked. Now, we're going to go ahead and do properties here, and I'm going to add another vNIC, okay? And we're going to put this guy on we're going to put this guy on 50. So we're going to say this is P1W ISE LV50. And next, and finish. So what I'm going to do is actually use that just as a temporary staging interface. And then we'll apply the actual traffic back here on just the root interface that is tagged VLAN all. I know, fun stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and do the deployment. Start, take it from the top. Next, V1WC9800. Next, we're going to do this new high throughput. That's fine. Next, and the data store we want. Next, then. All right, now I'm going to choose V50 here, and then gig 2. We're going to put this on the main trunk. Whoops, the main trunk port there. That way it's got access to the trunk. There we go. This will work. Should work. I think it'll work. Hope it'll work. We'll see if it works. All right, so gig 1, I'm going to do DHP because I've got DHP on VLAN 50. That's fine, DHP. And default route, we're just going to do 0.0.0.0. That's fine. Username, admin, super secret password. All right, and next. Looks good. All right, so you know that those little setup scripts in VMware just creates a little XML file that's used by the host to make certain decisions about its configuration, which is pretty nice. So we're going to go ahead and speed this guy up a little bit. All right, so now that that is done, let's go ahead and go under our controller, edit virtual machine settings before we turn it on. I know it's classic mode, and we're just going to delete this interface. We don't need it. We're not doing an HA deployment. If we decide to do an HA deployment later, just add it back, configure the HA, we're good to go. But right now, we don't need it. We need to pull up our console, though, and go through the initial console, setup. Actually, it's going to pretty much should come up with a manager interface on that VLAN 50, and then we can kind of configure it from there. So we're just going to watch this till we see what IP address it picks up on VLAN 50, and then we'll go through day 0 provisioning to set up the gig 2 interface. And if you don't have an out-of-band service port in your topology, a lot of people, some people do, some people don't. Some people like to have all of their devices use out-of-band interfaces for configuration in case that primary Ether channel bundle fails on physical controllers, or basically you're pushing lots of scripts, you're doing lots of automation. If you're using that out-of-band management to configure all your devices, it's a pretty nice network to have, actually. You don't have to worry about spanning tree killing your stuff and killing your configs and blocking part of your config pushes and all that. But a lot of people, again, they like to do phased rollouts where they push the code, they send another command to do the change, and then if something doesn't happen, it rolls back. There's all kinds of new automation features out there. So if you're not using that service port for anything useful, then configure the box, and then, basically you don't have to have it connected after that. But it's gig 2 that by default is going to be your primary interface. You could make it whatever you want, to be honest. It's an ESXi image, but the way the setup script runs, it's, I'll show you what I mean. As always, Chris having fun with what he does. And that's the way it should be. You should have fun with what you do. I'm going to talk to myself because you guys are not talking back. Wait, are you talking back? Just kidding. All right, so let's see if you can get to our here box. Well, we needed Chris to see which IP address we we're going to get. So let's see what we got. It does take a little bit to come up. These boxes are amazing. It's always amazed me how little horsepower like our wireless controllers have, and then how much they actually do in a network, and they're able to pull it off with just a lot of times very limited resources. Look at this. Go look at the specs on you know the older boxes, right? The 3504s or the 2106s, if you remember back then, or the 4400s. Damn, that thing was built like a freaking tank. If I was ever like going to get shot at, I would not mind at all having one of those Cisco 4400s in my hands or just around me to protect me, because I'm pretty sure that thing would laugh off a 50 cal for sure. All right. Failed to initialize NVRAM because there's not a startup big mofo. Yeah, this is where I am in life right now. It's where I am in life. I love it. All right. So let's see what IP address we get here, guys. And girls. See what we got going on. So there's that initial booting up, right? And we got our controller pre-installed here. So let's go ahead and log in. Super secret password. And you'll see kind of what was configured there in the beginning was those three interfaces. We don't actually need the third one, so we're going to get rid of that pretty quick. But we installed this with that one manager interface I was telling you about. So basically, we've got access to it in the lab. Let me go ahead and open that back up. And get this into frame for you. I'm using a widescreen monitor, so from time to time, if it looks like I'm bouncing around a little, that's what it is I'm trying to record in 1080 for you guys, but my widescreen is super awesome, like 5K, something like that. I don't know. It's pretty insane. I'm just playing. It is larger though, and that's what causes issues from time to time. So yeah. All right. So we're gonna open up our new C9800. See what happens. It's going to be a day zero configuration that we're going to have to deal with. I'm not a big fan of the day zero configuration myself. I love the new ESXi controllers and all that kind of stuff. Actually, it's not going to be available with that IP yet, because we had to deploy this in that the other network temporarily just to get it configured on the network I want to get it configured on using the setup script. I don't even want to use the setup script. And here's the thing. Normally, as long as you go in through the console and you give it an IP address on a VLAN and you enable gig 2 and you enable gig 2 to have access to that VLAN, then essentially you get to visit this page. Oh, whoops. What? Okay, we got more work to do. I'm going to go ahead and come over here and let's just see what the heck is up. So let's do ping 10.1.50.1 and let's see, show IP route. Okay, we are pinging that way. Let's see what. All right, so it looks like, I mean, there is certificates on here. So it looks like the device is being silly. Let's see here. 10.1.50.103. That's the problem. 10.1.50.103 is the IP address. So we need to put in the correct IP address, and then we'll get over to the correct interface. Yeah. Hopefully. Hopefully that's where we're going. All right. There we go. All right, so now we're at this new awesome controller interface. We're going to go ahead and choose to log in. And there's a day 0 setup script. There's a day 1 setup script. So Cisco loves their little setup scripts for these controllers. I thought we were going to get away from this with the whole airspace to ESXi, but apparently not. Now, we set the time zone to central. That's fine. The time is the correct time zone. We're going to go ahead and add a time server here. And this is what I meant by the day 0 setup script. If you notice day 0 up in the top. Our radius server, we'll go ahead and add that. Now we choose our management interface. So we're going to make it VLAN 10. I'm going to put this guy on our manager interface that we've been using here with our airspace controller at 32. And then we give our management VLAN DHP server. Now you can do this, like I said, from the CLI. It is supposed to be that as long as you add a country code for your APs, then you skip day 0 configuration. However, there's a bug in this particular code version where that's not the case. So we're going to go ahead and set up this WT data PSK. And network type, we're going to go ahead and just use personal. That's fine. And you know what? Let's just set up our WT data 3. And this time we're going to call it, yeah, we'll call it WT data 3. Let's do E. Let's do WT data 2. Because I kind of want to keep the authentication separate than the other one, than our 3504. So we're going to go ahead and add that. We can always change this, of course, once the controller's set up. In fact, that's where I like doing all that. So traffic type, data invoice, there's our virtual IP. We're going to generate a certificate for this. We want to use a minimum of SHA-2, if not more. So I'm going to put in our password there. Look at our summary and finish. Really, everything that we just did, like I said, can be done through the CLI. But I've been experiencing with this particular code version, and I don't want to sit here and try, several code versions. But even though you give it the country code, it's still coming up with day 0 configuration. So, and the other little caveat is you really need that service port configured for DHP or configured in a WLAN to do this initial configuration, and then make it your management 2 because of all that. Like I said, I tried this once earlier. I'm not sure if I'm going to include that part of it with the course, although I do like for you guys to see whenever I have problems in the troubleshooting behind it. I try to leave a lot of that in, so I probably will. But essentially, because of that caveat, you really kind of got to configure both gig 1 and 2. And they've got to be in different segments or else it won't work. Okay. You can't configure them both for the same IP space. Just doesn't work like that. All right, so we were logged out, and again, it may take a minute for everything to be applied as it said, but we'll go ahead and log back in here. And hopefully, we don't have to see the day 0 anymore. There's our dashboard. That's what we were looking for. Yay! All right, so we have finished the initial setup scripts for this controller. We should be able to now reach it again on our C9800 .Wi-Fi training.local. If not, that is just this is our DNS, and it's going to that manager interface. So it should be reachable here. Like I said, if not, we can fix it, but it is. All right. And let's go ahead and log in there. And we are now Web UI. So we're going to continue this in another video. This one's super long, and see you in the next one.